I remember the exact moment it happened. I was standing in the atrium of Redwood Strategies, sipping a lukewarm coffee that Sarah, the director of client services, had just handed me. It was a Friday morning in Chicago, the kind where Lake Michigan fog curls up along the skyline like it's hiding something. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 36, and this was the day my career was quietly torn out from under me. 5 years. That's how long I'd poured myself into this place. I wasn't just another employee. I was one of the original builders. I joined when our office was a sublet inside an old textile warehouse right off West Fulton. We had no clients, no clout, and barely enough budget for functioning Wi-Fi. But we had drive. I helped turn that scrappy startup into a serious player in the digital strategy space, bringing in $5.6 million in new client revenue along the way. But none of that seemed to matter anymore. "We truly value your contributions, Ethan," Sarah said, her voice syrupy smooth in that corporate cadence that feels more like an apology than praise. "But we're moving in a new direction. Greg will be stepping in to lead the team." Greg, the same guy who joined less than a year ago. The one who still used cheat sheets to navigate our CRM and once asked me how to build a pivot table in Excel. That Greg. I forced a smile. Of course. I understand completely. I didn't, but I've been in this game long enough to know when it was time to play it cool. What Sarah didn't see, what she couldn't see, was that I'd been preparing for this moment ever since she was hired. Her arrival was the beginning of the end. Her polished Stanford MBA vibe didn't match the raw, hands-dirty culture we'd built here. From day one, she spoke in buzzwords and wrapped her condescension in compliments. "You've created such a great foundation," she'd said during her first team meeting, "and now it's time to elevate. In other words, step aside, the professionals are here." She'd restructured the entire department within weeks. Every system I had built, every protocol, every playbook gone, replaced with sleek-looking dashboards and performance metrics that felt more like punishment than progress. Still, I adapted. I stayed late, learned her new systems, even gave her the benefit of the doubt. But no matter how much I bent, it was never enough. I wasn't executive enough. My leadership wasn't scalable. My relationships with clients were too personal and organic. Translation: I didn't look or sound like the polished consultant she wanted representing her version of Redwood Strategies. What Sarah didn't realize was that those organic relationships were exactly why clients stayed. They weren't just numbers in a pipeline. They were people I'd helped grow from scrappy startups into sustainable ventures. I remember their kids' birthdays. I'd sent handwritten notes when their Series A rounds closed. I'd stayed on Zoom calls until midnight helping founders rewrite launch decks. That's how I landed the Venture Core portfolio, a bundle of 8 tech startups worth over $80 million in funding. That deal alone brought $5.6 million into the company. And yet, 3 weeks after we popped champagne to celebrate the deal, I was being replaced. There's a specific kind of pain in being demoted. It's not loud or violent. It's quiet, surgical, a recalibration of your identity in front of people who used to look up to you. Suddenly, they avoid eye contact. The seat at the leadership table disappears. You become the guy who used to be someone. That weekend, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling fan in my apartment in Logan Square, replaying every decision I'd made for the past 5 years. The deals I'd fought for. The clients I'd built from scratch. The team I mentored. At 3:13 a.m. on Sunday morning, I got out of bed and opened my laptop. I bought a domain, brookstrategicpartners.com. I didn't have a business plan yet. Just a gut full of fury, a heart full of hurt, and a notebook of strategies that I knew worked because I'd built them with my own hands. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. I just wanted to build something of my own. Something that no Sarah or Greg could take away with a coffee and a smile. The Monday after my demotion was the longest day of my life. I walked into the Redwood Strategies office wearing the same blazer I wore when I closed the Venture Core deal, but now it felt like a costume, like I was playing a version of myself that no longer existed. Greg, freshly minted as department lead, greeted me with a forced enthusiasm that didn't quite mask his unease. He handed me a printed agenda for our transition onboarding session, a 2-hour block where I was supposed to teach him how to do my job. Ethan, your institutional knowledge is just invaluable, he said, tapping his leather notebook like he was unlocking the secrets of the universe. Sarah thinks we can really systematize what you've built. Systematize. That word hit me like a slap, as if the strategies I'd developed over half a decade, through trial, failure, intuition, and grit, were some chaotic collection of guesses in need of structure. As if my work was messy and emotional and not worthy of a clean, corporate bow. I smiled and said, happy to help any way I can. And I did help. I showed him the CRM tagging system I designed, the referral pipeline templates, even the onboarding flow I used to win over skeptical founders. But after hours, I was working on something entirely different. Brooks Strategic Partners was taking shape. It started simple. I used my savings to hire a freelance designer to help me create a clean, modern website. Just a one-pager listing my consulting services for early-stage tech firms. Brand positioning, go-to-market planning, customer lifecycle optimization. I wrote every line of copy myself. I filed my LLC in Illinois. I opened a business banking account. I started sketching client proposal templates in Canva at 1 a.m. under the glow of my desk lamp, a half-eaten burrito next to my keyboard. And I never approached a single Redwood client. I knew better. I'd signed a non-solicitation clause in my contract. I wasn't about to give Sarah and her legal team the ammunition they were clearly dying for. But client relationships aren't just paperwork. When you care, truly care, people notice when you disappear. The first message came from Jason Kim, the founder of ClearPath, one of the companies in the Venture Core portfolio. I'd helped him rebrand his product and position it to attract a new round of funding. Hey man, just saw the org chart update. Greg's name is where yours used to be. Everything cool. I stared at the message for a few minutes before replying. All good. Company's evolving. I'm still around. Greg's leading now. You're in good hands. 2 days later, Jason called me. Greg gave me a walkthrough of some analytics dashboards. Couldn't tell me a single thing about how our integration's tracking with Salesforce. I stayed quiet. Also, he called our audience techie Gen Zers. Ethan, our customers are mid-market healthcare providers. Does he even know who we are? I gave him a diplomatic answer. The company's adjusting. So am I. Jason paused. Are you staying? I'm evaluating my options. Hypothetically, if you weren't, that was the moment I realized the door hadn't closed behind me. It was just waiting for me to push it open in the other direction. We met for coffee the following week. Nothing official. Just two guys talking shop. Jason didn't offer me a contract. He wasn't stupid, but he did mention 3 companies outside the Venture Core group. Too small for Redwood. Too early stage. But they need the kind of strategic help you used to give us. I understood immediately. By the end of that month, I had 3 clients. None of them affiliated with Redwood. All of them growing. All of them grateful to have someone who actually listened. During the day, I was still senior advisor, reporting to Greg, pretending to take notes during pointless meetings. At night, I was building something that felt real. It wasn't sustainable. I was sleeping 4 hours a night. My apartment looked like a UPS depot. My fridge contained mustard, leftover Thai food, and 3 different brands of cold brew. My mom started calling twice a day, sensing something was off. But I couldn't stop. I was finally building for myself. And while Redwood descended into a swirl of micromanagement, 8 a.m. stand-ups, and more alignment sessions than deliverables, Brooks Strategic was quietly gaining traction. By month 4, I'd brought on a part-time contractor to help with design. My clients were sending referrals. I had a wait list. Then came the internal collapse. Client satisfaction surveys dropped like stones. 3 of the Venture Core startups escalated concerns about Greg's leadership. 2 of my former team members resigned in frustration. Sarah responded by increasing meetings and adding a new project management system that nobody asked for. Her solution to every crack in the structure was more glue, more tape, more walls. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Then, in one unforgettable meeting, after 60 minutes of blaming market shifts and team misalignment, Sarah turned to the group and said, "We need to get back to the level of service Ethan's team used to provide." She said it while looking directly at me. That was the moment something broke inside me. Not out of rage, out of exhaustion, out of clarity. I excused myself, walked to the bathroom, and vomited. Then I made a decision. I emailed Ryan, the founder. Can we grab coffee? Not at the office. His reply came 12 minutes later. Name the place. I'll be there. It was a Wednesday morning when I met Ryan at a small cafe tucked between a bike shop and a bookstore in Lincoln Park. Neutral ground, far from the glassy Redwood Strategies headquarters where everything had started to crumble. He looked older. The founder I'd once admired for his wild ideas and sleepless hustle now sat hunched over a latte, eyes ringed with stress. His trademark enthusiasm was gone, replaced by the weary posture of someone buried under too many investor calls and quarterly slides. "Ethan," he said with a tight smile, rising halfway from his seat. "It's good to see you." We shook hands like old teammates. But it wasn't the same. After some polite small talk, I cut to the chase. "I wanted to tell you in person. I'm leaving Redwood. I've started my own firm. I'm taking it full time." He paused, his face tightening just slightly. "I figured this was coming," he said quietly. "The demotion, among other things." "You knew?" I asked. "I didn't support it," he said, "but the board wanted someone with more traditional experience." Sarah lobbied hard. I got outvoted. I believed him. And yet, it didn't ease the sting. He had once told me I was the cornerstone of his company. But when it mattered, he'd stood aside and let the floor drop out from under me. "When are you telling Sarah?" he asked. "Tomorrow. Formal resignation. 2 weeks' notice." He nodded, looking down at his untouched drink. "She's going to see it as a betrayal, especially with everything going on." "That's her problem," I said. "Not mine." I kept my tone even, but my words cut deep. And Ryan knew it. "She'll come after you," he warned. "Your contract." "I haven't approached a single Redwood client," I said firmly. "Not one. I play by the rules. If she wants a legal battle, she'll have to manufacture one." He looked relieved, or maybe impressed. "I just wish it hadn't come to this," he said. "You were one of the best decisions I ever made." I wanted to thank him. I really did. But there was too much buried under that compliment. Too much he could have stopped and didn't. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. "Ethan," he said, his voice softer now. "Is it working? Your new firm." I looked him in the eyes. "It's working better than I ever expected." I walked out of that cafe with nothing but my car keys and the knowledge that I would never step into the Redwood office again. Not as an employee, not as an advisor, not as a second-class citizen in my own house. The next morning, I wore my best shirt, not for them, but for myself. I handed Sarah my resignation letter across her desk, and for the briefest second, I saw something I wasn't prepared for: fear. Real fear. Not disappointment. Not annoyance. Not even anger. Just plain, raw panic. She composed herself quickly, of course. "This is unexpected," she said, her fingers flicking through the letter without really reading it. "What prompted this decision?" I could have laughed. Instead, I offered her the same script they'd handed me months ago. "I've decided to pursue opportunities that better align with my long-term goals." Her expression stiffened. She got the message. "Are you joining another agency?" "I've launched my own consultancy," I said evenly. The color in her face shifted. She tried to mask it with a neutral tone. "You do understand your contract includes a comprehensive non-compete." "I'm aware," I said, and I complied. I haven't spoken to a single Redwood client or employee about leaving. Her eyes narrowed. "Ethan, surely you understand how this looks." "Yes," I said. "It looks like your leadership team underestimated me." Again, she leaned forward. "You had access to our most sensitive accounts, relationships we trusted you with." I returned her stare. "You trusted me until you didn't?" "The company made its decision 3 months ago. This is mine." She didn't fire me. Not outright, but she picked up the phone and called HR. An hour later, I was packing my things under supervision, escorted out like a security threat. My access was cut before I even reached the elevator. My company laptop wiped clean while I was in her office. My key card deactivated. 5 years reduced to a cardboard box and a forced smile from a junior HR rep. But I didn't feel ashamed. I felt free. On my way down, I checked my phone. Notifications were already rolling in. From colleagues. From clients. From people who'd heard something Seen something, sensed something shift. Derek from Blue Halo. Just saw Sarah's email. Weird energy, man. Call me. Marissa from Techo Solutions. What's going on? I'm hearing rumors. And then Jason from ClearPath. It's time for that hypothetical conversation. By that evening, I had 7 meetings lined up over coffee. All of them with people who had every legal reason to work with someone else, but were clearly hoping they didn't have to. No contracts broken. No rules violated. Just one simple truth. When you do good work and treat people like people, not leads, word gets around. Redwood had tried to erase me, but I was already rewriting my story somewhere else. 2 weeks after I walked out of Redwood Strategies for the last time, the ripples started becoming waves. The email went out on a Thursday morning. Sarah's name in bold at the top. Subject line, strategic restructuring announcement. I wasn't on a mailing list anymore, but several clients forwarded it to me, some with confusion, others with fury. The message introduced Greg officially as Director of Client Success. It also announced an 18% increase in retainer fees to reflect our enhanced service model. Enhanced service. That phrase was a slap in the face to every founder, CMO, and operations lead I'd spent years building trust with. Within hours, my phone lit up. Jason from ClearPath. 18% increase? For what? PowerPoint decks and buzzwords. Derek from Blue Halo. They raised our rates, but can't even explain our campaign performance. Thinking of pulling the plug. Marissa from Techo Solutions. Is your firm taking new clients yet? I didn't have to chase them. I didn't even have to say yes. The silence for me said enough. And their disappointment with Sarah's direction did the rest. By the following Monday, Blue Halo announced they would not be renewing their contract when it expired. Techo Solutions followed suit the next week. Both companies cited misalignment of strategic values in their formal notices. Sarah panicked. I know this because a mutual contact forwarded me an internal memo where she called an emergency client retention task force meeting. But it was too late. The people she saw as accounts had once been relationships, human connections I had built and nurtured. You can't plug in a new name and expect people to forget who fought in the trenches with them. Meanwhile, Brooks Strategic Partners was booming. I brought on 2 former Redwood employees, people who left after my demotion because they saw what was coming. They were smart, driven, and knew exactly how I operated. We moved into a tiny loft office with peeling paint and awful parking. I didn't care. It was mine. Then came the cease and desist letter. Prestige Tech, sorry, Redwood Strategies, had sent it through a law firm I'd never heard of. A thick, overly aggressive document filled with legalese, claiming I had intentionally disrupted existing contracts and engaged in unfair competition. They demanded I stop all communication with any current or former Redwood clients and provide a full client list for verification. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer, Emma, an old friend from college who now specialized in employment law. Her response came within hours. They're bluffing. You've done nothing wrong. This is textbook intimidation. She crafted a response so clean, so sharp, it could have cut glass. It stated, with precision, that I had never approached a single Redwood client. It included excerpts from Sarah's own emails about rate increases and leadership changes. And it reminded them, politely, that if they chose to escalate, Discovery would open up every internal message, memo, and Slack thread about my demotion, client complaints, and the company's restructuring failures. We welcome that process, she wrote at the end, should you choose to proceed. We never heard from them again. By month 3, my firm had 6 team members. We were at full capacity and turning clients away. The wait list was long, the referrals nonstop. But the real game changer came in the form of a dinner invitation. From Ryan. This time it wasn't a coffee shop or midday check-in. It was a high-end restaurant in River North, the kind of place you only go when you're trying to impress or beg. He looked worse than before. Tired. Hollowed out. We ordered steaks. He barely touched his. We've lost 7 clients, he admitted quietly. 3 more have reduced their scope. The board's nervous. Q3 is looking grim. I waited. They're bringing in a crisis consultant. But that's not why I asked you here. I said nothing. Then he looked at me. Are you trying to destroy Redwood? The question stopped me cold. I put down my fork. No, I said, soft but firm. I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm building something that should have existed all along. Something based on real relationships, real strategy, real leadership. The kind we used to talk about before Sarah showed up with her whiteboards and empty promises. He flinched at that. The clients who left. I continued. They didn't leave because I poached them. They left because what they valued about Redwood walked out the door with me. And you let it happen. There was a long silence. Then he dropped it. The board wants me to explore partnership. Bring Brooks Strategic under the Redwood umbrella. Full autonomy. Your team. Your brand. Your direction. Executive title. Significant compensation. It should have felt like validation. 6 months ago, I would have taken the offer in a heartbeat. 3 months ago, I might have seen it as justice. But now, it felt like a life I'd already outgrown. I leaned back in my chair. Ryan, I don't need Redwood anymore. I'm not looking to be rescued. I'm not trying to be seen. I've already seen myself. And I'm finally building something that reflects who I am. He nodded slowly. You're turning it down? I am. What if I told you Sarah's being let go? I paused. A flicker of satisfaction danced behind my ribs. But only for a second. Then I'd say you're still making decisions based on fear, not vision. You're not trying to build something new. You're trying to stop what I've become. I stood to leave. He offered one last pitch. Think about the clients still at Redwood. They're struggling. I shook my head. If they were struggling, they'd call me. Most of them already have. The rest? They're either fine, or they've moved on, just like I did. When the check came, I grabbed it first. This one's on me, I said. Call it a thank you for pushing me out when I needed it most. 3 weeks after that dinner with Ryan, my phone buzzed while I was reviewing proposals at my new office. A sunlit corner suite overlooking the Chicago River, with the hum of the city rising below like a distant song. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before picking up. This is Ethan. Mr. Brooks? This is Teresa Lynn. I'm an executive recruiter representing the Venture Core portfolio. My spine straightened. Venture Core, the $5.6 million deal I'd once brokered, the crown jewel Sarah had used to justify replacing me. We're building an in-house marketing collaborative for all 8 of our portfolio companies, she continued. Jason Kim at ClearPath suggested we speak. He was adamant. Jason, of course. I didn't say anything. I just listened. The role involves designing the collaborative structure, leading the strategic vision, and overseeing implementation. It comes with equity in each portfolio company and a permanent advisory seat. I blinked. That's not a job. That's a legacy. We understand you're running your own firm now, she said. In fact, that's part of the appeal. The Venture Core board isn't looking for an employee. They're proposing an acquisition of Brooks Strategic Partners. Everything around me slowed. The terms would allow you to retain your entire team, your branding, and full control. Your company would become the foundation for this new collaborative. You'd lead it entirely. They're not asking for a boss. They're asking for a builder. She emailed the term sheet that afternoon. The offer was staggering. Financial independence, ownership, creative freedom, a national stage, and poetic justice. Venture Core, the clients that Sarah had celebrated as her big win, were now coming to me, not because I was available, but because I had proven quietly and consistently that I was the real thing. I signed the deal a week later. The following morning, I opened LinkedIn to find a connection request from Sarah. Her headline now read, Seeking New Opportunities, Marketing Executive Strategic Leadership. I didn't accept, not because I was angry, not anymore. I had simply outgrown the world where she thought I belonged. People ask me all the time, Ethan, does it feel like revenge? Watching Redwood unravel while you're soaring. But here's the truth. The real revenge wasn't the collapse of the old guard. It wasn't Sarah's email announcing her departure. It wasn't Greg adding crisis management to his resume. The real revenge was knowing that I never needed their validation to begin with. That everything Sarah tried to silence, my unconventional leadership, my deep client bonds, my original frameworks, those are the very things that built my success. And they always had been. Redwood saw me as a liability because I didn't fit their blueprint. I wasn't polished enough. I was too real, too loyal, too human. Turns out, That's exactly what people want when the stakes are high and the trust is thin. I don't know what's next for Redwood. Ryan hasn't called since the acquisition was announced. Greg hasn't updated his title again. Sarah, last I heard, was interviewing at a mid-size firm in Austin. Meanwhile, my team is growing. I've got 20 more hires to make before Q4. We're fielding partnership requests from companies that wouldn't take my calls a year ago. And every morning, when I unlock the doors to our new headquarters, I'm reminded of that single, awkward coffee with Sarah, how she looked me in the eye and told me Greg had the experience we need. She had no idea what I was about to build. Sometimes, I think about what I'd say to her if we ever crossed paths again. But then I remember, she's already heard my answer. It's in the headlines, in the lost contracts, in the team that walked, in the clients that followed, in the empire rising from the ashes of her assumptions. So here's to the demotion that set me free, to the coffee that tasted like betrayal but turned out to be rocket fuel, to the people who underestimated me and taught me to never underestimate myself again. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told you weren't the right fit for what you helped build, remember this. Sometimes what feels like an ending is really just the push you needed to create something better. If this story spoke to you, stay connected. There's more to come. Real stories, real lessons, real comebacks. And if you haven't yet, you're welcome to follow along. You never know when the next chapter might be the one you needed to hear.